On the night before our anniversary, she dragged her suitcase out the door for a girls' trip. She didn't even hug me goodbye. I stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching the wheels of her luggage bump against the cracked pavement. The sound was sharp, hollow, like nails tapping on glass. She didn't look back, didn't hesitate, just walked, heels clicking, suitcase in tow, like she was late for a flight that mattered more than me. It was our anniversary, 7 years married, 11 together, and she was leaving. I wish I could tell you I stopped her, that I made some grand plea for her to stay, that I reminded her of the vows we made, the life we built, the quiet nights in our small kitchen where we once dreamed about the future. But I didn't. I just stood there, my hand gripping the doorframe, so tight my knuckles turned white. "Don't wait up," she had said earlier, almost casually, tossing the words over her shoulder while zipping her bag. No smile, no apology, just a line rehearsed, like she had said it to herself in the mirror a dozen times. I tried to remind her, gently at first, that the weekend mattered, that it wasn't just another date, that it was the day we promised each other forever. She brushed me off, told me I was being dramatic. "It's just a date, Liam," she muttered, not even looking up from her phone. Those words burrowed into me, settling in my chest like ice. I never thought anniversaries were just dates. They were checkpoints, proof that despite the chaos of work and bills and obligations, we still chose each other. And now, she was choosing Vermont with her bridesmaids over me. I stayed at the window long after she got into the Uber, long after the taillights bled red into the night and disappeared around the corner. The silence in the house was immediate and suffocating. The kind of silence that doesn't feel restful. It feels like absence, like being left behind. And that's exactly what I was, left behind on the eve of my own anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman I once thought I couldn't live without had just proven that she could live without me, at least for this weekend, maybe longer. I walked back inside, the echo of her suitcase still rattling in my ears, and looked at the table where I had set aside the envelope with the dinner reservation. A fancy place, the kind you had to book months in advance. I had planned to surprise her. 7 o'clock, candlelight, a bottle of wine she once said she wanted to try. Now it sat there, unopened, useless, a reminder of how little my efforts mattered anymore. That's when it hit me. She hadn't forgotten the anniversary. She had dismissed it. And somehow, that was worse. The argument that night wasn't loud. No slammed doors, no shattered dishes. It was quieter, and somehow, that made it worse. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her suitcase already open on the floor, clothes folded into neat stacks, like she was packing for a business trip instead of walking out on our anniversary. I leaned against the dresser, arms crossed, watching her toss a pair of jeans on top of the pile. "Miranda," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "tomorrow's our anniversary." She didn't even look up. "I know." "That's it? You know?" My chest tightened. "And you're still leaving?" Finally she sighed, slow and deliberate, like I was a child asking the same question for the 10th time. She turned, one hand still gripping a blouse, the other resting on her hip. Her eyes rolled before her words even came. "It's just a date, Liam. We've been together long enough. One weekend away isn't the end of the world." Just a date. She said it so flatly, like she was talking about a dental appointment or renewing the car tags. Not the day we stood in front of our families and promised to stand beside each other no matter what. "Just a date?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "It's the one day that's supposed to mean something. It's not about a dinner reservation. It's not about flowers. It's about us. About remembering why we even started this." She dropped the blouse into the suitcase, zipped it halfway, and finally looked at me. That look, God, I'll never forget it. Not anger, not sadness, just indifference. "You always do this," she said. "You blow things up. You make everything a crisis. I told you weeks ago I was going on this trip. It's not like I'm canceling the wedding or filing for divorce. I'm going to Vermont for a bachelorette weekend. You'll survive." Her words cut sharper than if she had yelled. She wasn't trying to hurt me, not directly. She was dismissing me, dismissing us. I wanted to argue more, to lay it all out. The late nights where she stared at her phone instead of me, the way she pulled away from my touch in bed, the fact that I couldn't remember the last time she laughed at one of my jokes. But the words clogged in my throat. Instead, I stood there, heart pounding, while she snapped the suitcase shut with finality. "Don't wait up," she repeated, softer this time, like it was an afterthought. And then she brushed past me, the scent of her perfume lingering in the air, as if that was all I'd have left of her. The argument wasn't really about the anniversary. It was about what it symbolized. That she didn't value what we built anymore, at least not enough to pause her plans for one night. She thought it was just a date, but to me, it was proof of something I didn't want to admit yet. We weren't standing on the same side of this marriage anymore. The apartment felt different the second the door closed behind her. It wasn't just quiet. Quiet can be peaceful. This was hollow, like the air had been sucked out and replaced with something heavier. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock on the wall, even the faint sound of traffic outside, none of it filled the space she left behind. I sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the reservation envelope still lying on the table. A stupid white slip of paper with the restaurant's name embossed in gold lettering. I had imagined handing it to her with a smile, telling her to get dressed up, that I had something special planned. Instead, it mocked me from across the room.
7 years married, 11 years together, and I was spending the night before our anniversary alone in a 2-bedroom apartment that suddenly felt too big. I thought about calling someone, maybe my brother, maybe Jonah, my oldest friend, but what was I going to say? "Hey man, my wife ditched our anniversary to go party with her bridesmaids. You want to grab a beer?" No, the words were too raw, too pathetic. So I sat there, alone. The silence started pressing on me in waves, pulling out memories I didn't ask for. The first anniversary, when we could barely afford dinner, but split a bottle of cheap champagne anyway and laughed until we cried. The one where she surprised me with tickets to a Yankees game because she knew I'd never been. The night we lay on the living room floor with takeout, surrounded by unopened moving boxes, celebrating our first home together. And now she was in Vermont, drinking wine and laughing with her friends, while I couldn't even remember the last time she looked at me like I mattered. I tried turning on the TV, scrolling through channels just to drown out the noise of my own thoughts, but nothing stuck. Every laugh track, every commercial break, it all just felt fake. I poured myself a drink instead. 1 became 2. 2 became 3. The glass of whiskey didn't taste good, but at least it filled the emptiness in my chest for a few minutes at a time. By midnight, the apartment was still. No call, no text, not even a half-hearted "love you" she used to toss me before bed. Just silence. That night, lying in our bed alone, I realized something that terrified me. I couldn't remember the last time her absence felt unusual. Her being gone, whether it was working late, out with friends, or on her phone while sitting 2 feet from me, had started to feel normal. And I hated myself for letting it get that far. The silence didn't just highlight her absence.
It whispered the truth I didn't want to face. She was already gone, long before she wheeled that suitcase out the door. By Saturday night, the silence had worn me thin. I couldn't sit in that apartment another minute, staring at the envelope on the table or the empty spot on the bed. So, I called Jonah. Jonah had been my best friend since high school, the kind of guy who still wore the same baseball cap from senior year like it was a part of his head. He didn't ask many questions when I called, just said, "Mercer's in an hour?" And that was that. Mercer's was a lakeside bar, tucked between a marina and a bait shop, the kind of place where nobody dressed up and the beer always came in glass bottles. I got there first and slid into our usual booth by the window. The lake stretched out black and endless outside, the moon cutting a thin scar of silver across its surface. Jonah showed up with his younger brother Tyler, both laughing about some baseball stat that meant nothing to me. They plopped down across from me, ordered nachos, and kept the conversation moving like it always did. Light, casual, easy. I tried to keep up. I laughed at the right times, nodded when Tyler went on about pitching rotations, even raised my bottle when they toasted to surviving another week in the American dream. But the truth was, I was somewhere else entirely. My eyes kept drifting back to the lake, dark and still, as though it held an answer I couldn't find in my own head. "You good, man?" Jonah finally asked when Tyler stepped away to hit the restroom. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired. Long week." He didn't press. That's what I appreciated about Jonah. He never forced the conversation, never pried into places I wasn't ready to open. But his eyes lingered on me for a second too long, like he knew there was more behind the silence. The nachos came, Tyler returned. The game played on the muted TV above the bar, and for a couple of hours, I managed to pretend I was just another guy hanging out with his friends, not a husband drinking away the sting of being forgotten on his anniversary. But even surrounded by familiar voices, I felt like a ghost at that table, present but not alive, laughing but not connected. Their words skimmed the surface, but nothing reached me. That's when I realized something important. Loneliness doesn't always mean being alone. Sometimes it's sitting at a table full of people who care about you and still feeling like you're sinking underwater. I left Mercer's that night with a full stomach, a buzz from 3 beers, and the same emptiness I walked in with. Old friends could offer comfort, sure, but they couldn't fill the hollow space she left in me. The lake was still when I walked to my car, its surface unbroken, like it was mocking me. I stood there for a long moment, hands in my pockets, watching my breath cloud the cool night air. And I thought, maybe this was the new normal, a life measured in distractions instead of connections. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Something had shifted, and no amount of nachos or shallow laughter could cover it. Sunday morning came with a dull headache, not from the beer, but from the weight pressing on me since she left. I rolled over in bed, half expecting to see her side of the mattress still warm, like old habit could erase the truth. It was cold, untouched. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Finally, a text from her. "Morning. Having fun. Don't wait up tonight either." That was it. No, "I miss you," no picture, not even a heart emoji she used to toss into messages without thinking. Just words that sounded more like a coworker checking in than a wife away on our anniversary weekend. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, unsure what to say. I miss felt too vulnerable. I love felt one-sided. So I settled on, "Hope you're enjoying yourself." An hour later, she replied, "Yeah, Vermont is beautiful. The girls are keeping me busy." Busy. That word carried a weight it didn't need to. Busy doing what? Busy with who? I tried to ignore the gnawing in my gut. Maybe she was just caught up in the trip. maybe I was being paranoid. But then again, wasn't that exactly what I told myself the last few months when she stayed late at work or went out just for drinks with her coworkers?
Throughout the day, her texts trickled in, vague and hollow. Going hiking, at a winery, out for dinner with the girls. No pictures, no details, just headlines. It was the kind of communication you give someone you're obligated to update, not someone you're eager to connect with. At one point, I sent, "Happy anniversary." 3 hours later, she responded, "Oh, right. Happy anniversary. We'll celebrate when I get back." Oh, right. 2 words that twisted in my chest like a knife. She hadn't forgotten. She had just pushed it aside, like it wasn't worth remembering until I reminded her. The rest of Sunday blurred into meaningless motions. I cooked dinner, ate half of it in silence, and scraped the plate into the trash. I tried watching the game, but couldn't focus. The apartment was too quiet, and every time my phone buzzed, my stomach knotted. By nightfall, I realized something ugly. I wasn't waiting for her to come home. I was waiting for the moment her words slipped, for the mask to crack, for something in those vague texts to expose what I already feared. It wasn't that she was too busy to talk. It was that she didn't want to. And that realization sat heavier than the silence. Monday morning, I woke up to another short message from her. "Heading out. No service where we're going." That was all. No good morning, no mention of me, just a warning that she'd be off the grid. It was the kind of message that should have reassured me, like she was giving me a heads up so I wouldn't worry. But instead, it landed like a stone in my stomach. Because that's not how she used to talk to me. She used to overshare. Pictures of the breakfast spread, goofy selfies with her friends, updates about how much wine they'd had the night before. This stripped-down, minimal communication, it felt rehearsed, careful. That's when the first real suspicion lodged itself in me. I kept replaying the scene of her packing, the way she rolled her eyes when I brought up our anniversary, the indifference in her voice when she said it was just a date. And now, the bare minimum texts. Like she was keeping me informed only because she felt obligated, not because she wanted me to be part of her experience. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't sit still. I walked the apartment like a caged animal, every sound amplified in the silence. I picked up my phone, set it down, then picked it up again. Her last message still sat there, unread looking, even though I'd read it a dozen times. I thought about calling Jonah, but what would I say? That my wife's texts felt too vague? That the tone of her words didn't match the woman I married? To anyone else, it would sound like paranoia. But to me, it was the start of a pattern. And patterns mattered. That night, I scrolled through social media, half out of boredom, half out of habit. Nothing from her account. No stories, no posts. She used to be the kind of person who shared everything, from sunsets to latte art. Now, nothing. But then I noticed one of her friends, Lacey, had posted a group photo. It was grainy, taken in a dimly lit bar. A handful of women squeezed together, all smiles and cocktails in hand. My wife was in the middle, tilting her head toward the camera, but her body angled slightly away, as if the photographer had caught her mid-turn. And there, at the edge of the frame, almost cut out, was a man's arm draped casually over the back of her chair. It could have been nothing, just a stranger in the background, but the sight of it made my throat tighten. That was the moment suspicion became more than a whisper. It became a shadow I couldn't shake. The photo haunted me.
It wasn't the group of smiling women that unsettled me. It was that arm. That small, almost insignificant detail that shouldn't have mattered, but did. Because I knew my wife. I knew the way she leaned into photos, always front and center, always aware of her angles. This wasn't that. This was her half turned away, like she'd been caught in a moment she didn't want frozen. I stared at the picture until my phone screen dimmed. Zoomed in, zoomed out. That arm. A man's arm. Not Tyler or Jonah or some friend of mine I could explain away. Just a presence that didn't belong in the frame of her story, in the frame of my marriage. The next morning, I checked again. Another photo had popped up, this time from Tasha's account. Same bar, different angle. The girls lined up at the counter, drinks in hand, laughing. My wife at the edge of the shot, hair tucked behind her ear, smile faint but not quite reaching her eyes. And there it was again, that same arm. Resting behind her, not touching, but close enough to suggest familiarity. Not the arm of a stranger passing by. The body was cropped out, but you could see the sleeve of a dark shirt, a hand relaxed, like it belonged there. I tried telling myself I was overthinking it, that it was just coincidence, that one of the girl's boyfriends must have tagged along for a night. But then the questions followed, sharp and relentless. Why hadn't she mentioned it? Why no pictures of just the group? Why only vague texts, carefully worded, as if she was avoiding detail? By Wednesday, my chest was a knot of unease. I checked her feed, still nothing. Checked her friends' feeds, more pictures, more laughter. My wife in all of them, but never looking at the camera the way she used to. Always angled, always half in, half out. It was subtle, but I saw it. She was there, but not present, smiling, but not fully. Like her attention was split between the group and something or someone just out of frame. The photos didn't add up. Not to the woman who once sent me 3 pictures of a pancake stack because she thought the syrup looked too perfect to waste. Not to the wife who used to FaceTime me from the grocery store just to show me the ridiculous new flavor of Oreos she found. This was someone else, someone careful, someone hiding. And for the first time in 11 years, I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. Up until that week, I'd always been the kind of man who let things slide, the type to bite my tongue, to tell myself I was imagining things, to convince myself that marriage was about weathering storms quietly until the skies cleared. But staring at those photos, replaying the hollow texts, something inside me shifted. I was done being passive. It wasn't rage, not yet. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was clarity, cold and steady. The kind of clarity that comes when you realize silence isn't noble. It's surrender. And I had been surrendering for too long. I thought back to all the little signs I'd brushed off. The way she angled her phone away from me at night, the sudden girls' nights that came with no real explanations, the way she flinched when I mentioned anniversaries or date nights like I was burdening her. Each moment felt small on its own, but strung together, they painted a picture I could no longer ignore. So I made a choice. If she was building a secret life outside of me, I wasn't going to sit quietly in the dark anymore. Thursday evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open. Not eating, just staring at the screen while the cursor blinked on an empty search bar. It felt ridiculous, like I was some paranoid husband in a bad movie. But still, I started typing. Vermont bars, Vermont hotels, Bachelorette packages. I scrolled through websites, pictures of smiling brides-to-be clinking glasses under neon lights. I imagined her in those photos, laughing, sipping wine, and maybe slipping away when no one noticed. I even caught myself clicking on her friends' tagged locations, searching for clues. A bar here, a winery there. I mapped it all out, building a timeline in my head. But it only deepened the pit in my stomach. Too many gaps, too much space unaccounted for. That's when I realized I couldn't rely on scraps anymore. If I wanted the truth, I'd have to take control of the story myself. By Friday, I had made up my mind. When she came home, I wasn't going to play dumb. I wasn't going to swallow the vague explanations or nod at her rehearsed smiles. I would look her in the eye and demand the answers I deserved. For the first time in years, I wasn't scared of rocking the boat. I was ready to capsize it if I had to. Because silence hadn't saved us. It had only buried me. She came home Sunday evening, suitcase in hand, like she had just returned from a harmless weekend of laughter and wine. Her hair was slightly frizzed from travel, her makeup rubbed off, and yet there was a glow about her, a lightness I hadn't seen in years. The kind of glow that comes when you're free of responsibility, free of guilt, or maybe because she had gotten away with something. I stood by the kitchen counter as she dragged the suitcase across the hardwood. She glanced up, her eyes meeting mine for the briefest second before darting away. "Hey," she said, too casually. "Flight was delayed. I'm starving." No hug, no kiss, no "I missed you." Just hunger and convenience. I didn't move, didn't smile, didn't ask about her trip like she probably expected me to. Instead, I said, "How was Vermont?" She froze for half a heartbeat, then shrugged. "Good, typical girls' trip. Wine tours, late nights, nothing exciting." I let the silence stretch, watched her squirm as she opened the fridge and pulled out a bottle of water, her hand tightening just slightly on the cap. "Nothing exciting," I repeated slowly. "That's funny, because it seems like there was more than just wine and late nights." Her shoulders stiffened. She turned, eyes narrowing. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam my hand on the counter. I just pulled my phone from my pocket, swiped to the photos her friends had posted, and held the screen out toward her. Her face drained of color. The picture wasn't damning, not on its own. Just a group shot in a bar with a man's arm casually draped over the back of her chair. But it was enough to make her chest rise and fall faster, her throat tightening as she searched for words. "Who was he?" I asked. My voice was low, even. "The guy cropped out of half the photos, the one with his arm behind you." She laughed, sharp and brittle. "Are you serious, Liam? You're reading into a stranger's elbow in the background of a photo? That's pathetic." But her laugh didn't reach her eyes. I stepped closer, my gaze locked on hers. "Don't insult me with half-truths. I've been quiet long enough. Tell me the truth. Were you with someone?" For the first time in years, I saw her flinch. Not from anger, from recognition. She knew I wasn't the same man who had let things slide, who had swallowed excuses. This time, I wasn't moving on until I had an answer. The confrontation had begun, and whether she admitted it or not, she knew the truth had already cracked the surface. At first, she tried to brazen it out. "Liam, you're paranoid," she said, twisting the cap off her water bottle with unnecessary force. "It was just a group trip. You really think I'd do something like that? On my Bachelorette weekend? With my friends right there?" The words came quick, defensive, too polished. I'd heard students in Jonah's class lie with more conviction. I didn't move. I didn't yell. I just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. Silence has weight, and in that kitchen, it pressed down harder than any accusation I could have spoken. Finally, she broke. "Fine," she snapped, setting the bottle down so hard it rattled on the counter. "There was a guy, one of the bartenders. He was hanging around, flirting with the group. It wasn't a big deal. My stomach turned. I wanted to stop there, to cling to that sliver of a story. But the tone in her voice, dismissive, careless, kept me rooted. "What do you mean, not a big deal?" I asked. Her eyes darted away, toward the floor, then back at me. "We talked. We danced. That's it. You're making it sound like I slept with him or something." Her choice of words was telling. "You're making it sound like, not I didn't." "Did you?" I asked, bluntly. She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "God, you're impossible. I can't even tell you something without you twisting it." I stepped closer. "Miranda, did you?" The seconds stretched. Her lips pressed together, jaw tight. Then, with a shrug that felt rehearsed, she muttered, "Maybe. It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything." My chest clenched, like someone had driven a fist straight through me. She said it so casually, like admitting to an impulse buy at the grocery store, not tearing apart the foundation of our marriage. "Not serious," I repeated. My voice sounded foreign, hollow. "It didn't mean anything." She rolled her eyes, like I was being dramatic. "It was one night. I was drunk. The girls didn't even know. And honestly, you're acting like this marriage has been perfect. You barely notice me anymore." There it was. Not just the confession, but the justification. The shift from guilt to blame. I felt the room tilt around me. My legs heavy. My breath uneven. All the silence I had carried, all the doubts I had swallowed, crystallized into a single truth. She had already left me, long before that night in Vermont. Her confession wasn't a crack. It was the collapse. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even storm out like part of me wanted to. I just stood there, steady in a way that scared even me. Because the fire wasn't in her confession. It was in what came after. I walked past her, slow, deliberate, to the living room. She followed, still defensive, still tossing words at me like stones. "You're overreacting. It wasn't love. It wasn't an affair. It was just one stupid night." But each word fell flat against the weight of the silence I carried now. I sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on my knees, staring at the floorboards we'd chosen together 3 years earlier. Back then, we'd argued over whether to go with the dark walnut or the lighter oak. She wanted the walnut because she said it felt richer. I let her have it. And now here I was, staring at those boards, realizing how much of my life had been built on letting her have it. "You don't get it, do you?" I finally said, my voice low. "It's not just about that night. It's about every moment that led to it. The way you dismissed me, the way you brushed off our anniversary like it was trash, the way you've been slowly pulling away for months. That night in Vermont was just the final nail." She scoffed, folding her arms across her chest. "So what? You're going to throw away 7 years over one mistake?" I lifted my eyes to hers, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't see the woman I married. I saw someone who didn't value what we had, someone who thought vows could bend with convenience. "No," I said evenly. "You threw it away. I'm just finally acknowledging it." Her face hardened. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but no words came. Maybe because she knew the truth had already burned through every excuse. Walking through the fire wasn't about clinging to what was left. It was about letting it burn, letting the flames take everything false and fragile, and stepping through to whatever came after. I didn't know yet what that looked like, but I knew one thing. I couldn't carry her betrayal and my silence anymore. One of them had to die, and I had already made my choice. The next morning, I woke up in the same bed we had shared for years, but it felt different, lighter. Not because the pain was gone, it wasn't. The weight in my chest was still there, pressing hard. But because for the first time, I wasn't pretending anymore. She moved quietly around the apartment, avoiding me. No good morning, no attempt at reconciliation, just silence. The kind of silence people sit in when they know something's ending, but don't want to be the first to say it. I didn't stop her. I didn't ask for explanations. I had everything I needed. By noon, I was at the leasing office down the street, asking about short-term rentals. By 3, I had signed papers for a small one-bedroom not far from my brother's place. Beige walls, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Mine, and free of the ghost of her perfume lingering in the hallways. Free of the hollow anniversaries that felt like obligations instead of celebrations. When I came back to the apartment, she was sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone. She looked up, startled, when I dropped my keys on the counter. "I'm leaving," I said. Her face shifted. Shock, then annoyance, then something that might have been fear. "You're really walking away over one mistake?" I shook my head. "I'm walking away because I finally see the truth. You left a long time ago, Miranda. I just didn't want to admit it." She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to beg, but I didn't wait for the words. I picked up the small duffel I had packed earlier, slung it over my shoulder, and walked out the door. The hallway felt endless, but each step lighter than the one before. That night, in my new apartment, I sat on a couch that wasn't broken in yet, eating takeout straight from the container, no TV on, no phone in my hand, just silence. But this silence was different, not hollow, not suffocating. This was space. Space to breathe, to think, to rebuild. And as the night stretched on, I realized something I wish I'd known years earlier. Love isn't about clinging to someone who diminishes you. It's about standing up for yourself when they stop standing beside you. So here's my advice. To anyone reading this, anyone who's staring at the same kind of silence I lived in, don't wait until the fire consumes everything. Step through it. Reclaim your future, even if it means reclaiming it alone. Because sometimes the only way forward is without them.